All right, good morning, everyone. We still have a numbers of people joining us still, but we will go ahead and get started. We are excited for this morning's training on embracing disability awareness and etiquette into the workplace. Again, my name is Kim Ludwig, and I'll be your moderator for today's training. The training is being sponsored by the South Dakota Division of Rehabilitation Services, the South Dakota Retailers Association, the Sioux Falls Business Resource Network, and the Workforce Diversity Network of the Black Hills. We're excited to have the Rocky Mountain ADA Center with us again to facilitate a training, which we're joined once again by Ed Nieberg and Maggie Sims. For those of you that are not familiar with the Rocky Mountain ADA Center, they provide information, guidance, and training on the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, to meet the needs of individuals and organizations in Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming. Ed is a training facilitator for the Rocky Mountain ADA Center. Prior to working with the Rocky Mountain ADA Center, Ed was the ADA manager for Denver's Regional Transportation District. Ed is a certified ADA coordinator and has been a presenter at past national ADA symposiums. Maggie is the project manager of the Rocky Mountain ADA Center and is the longest tenured employee of the center. She specializes in outreach and providing informational, technical guidance and training on the ADA for the center's 6-region state. She is also an expert on the ADA and effective communication processes and skilled in sign language. Maggie is also where she provides guidance on any calls for technical assistance and also focused on providing support to the 6-state region as well. Before we get started, I would just want to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. First, today's presentation has the availability of closed captioning, and as you've seen in the chat box, I provided the link. I'll provide that again here in just a couple of minutes. And if you also require a sign language interpreter, Julie Pollock is our sign language interpreter for today's training, you can pin her on your screen as well. Also, the training is going to be recorded, so the recording link will be made available following the training. And for those of you that require a CRC or a CSP or a certificate of attendance, there's going to be a link made available towards the end of the presentation for you to complete to show that you participated in today's training. And lastly, we would love to hear from you during the training. So if you have any comments or questions, please use the chat box feature that is located on your control panel. And also, if you have any technical difficulties, be sure to message me directly using the chat box. So with that, let's get started with our training. So Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Appreciate it. That was quite an introduction of my background. I really appreciate that. One thing I'd like to add to that, I've had over 20 years of experience working in the ADA as a ADA code investigator, and again, an ADA manager, ADA coordinator. So seen quite a bit in this area. Really enjoyed working in this field. It's very rewarding. And I'd also defer to Maggie. Is there anything you'd like to add about yourself, Maggie, before we get started?
Just that I want to point out that I'm the oldest tenured person there, but not the oldest person at the office. So no, Kim, thank you. That was great information. And I will be here if you have questions, just to support Ed. And thank you, Ed, for presenting to us today.
Sure. So today we're going to talk about disability awareness and some etiquette in reference to people with disabilities. Before we get into that, I just want to do a little housekeeping on our side. We are the Rocky Mountain ADA Center. We are an informational center. We provide assistance and guidance on the ADA. We are not a legal company. We are not lawyers. We do not provide legal guidance. We do hope, though, that what we do provide to you can give you some direction to go into, and we do all kinds of different things in reference to the ADA, and I'll talk about those in a sec. We are associated with a consulting group called Meeting the Challenge, and we are funded by a grant from the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. It's NIDLR for short. We function under a 5-year grant, and we are at the end of our 5 years, and we have applied for another 5 years, and hopefully we'll know, I think, in the fall that we are going to be continuing on with that grant in our services. We do cover a 6-state region. If you look at this slide here in the bottom right corner, there are 10 regions throughout the country. We are Region 8, that covers North and South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. So we are Region 8. That's part of you. That's part of you guys, South Dakota. If you see that phone number up there, that is a kind of a unique 1-800 number. If you are up in like Region 1 in the northeast part of the country and you dial that number, you will get the Northeast ADA regional center. So that number gets you to the center that you're calling from. So if you dial that number from South Dakota, you'll get Region 8, you'll get us. So it's a unique number, but it's a good one to remember. Also, based on the resources and the help that we can provide, and hopefully get you squared away. Again, we provide technical assistance. We conduct research. We just had a science research report yesterday conference, and it was very interesting. All the centers do research, and they were reporting out yesterday on all the research they do around disability and disability-related issues and matters. We obviously provide trainings, publish and share material, and we are connected with social media, as you can see here, Facebook, YouTube, all the basics. So that's where we're at on that. So I'd like to start out here, and again, with my presentations, I usually ask for a little interaction if possible. I know it's very difficult or can be a little challenge with the virtual stuff, but we have some pictures here, and I would like to know if anybody wants to weigh in real quickly and tell me what's wrong with these pictures, if anything. Do you see anything wrong with these pictures? And if you can help me out, Kim, and tell me if anybody's sharing what they can see here.
Yep, I sure will, Ed. I just put a message in the chat box. Just use the chat box. Let's see, we have one response so far from Jessica. Janitor closet has cover over Braille.
Excellent.
We've got a number of responses coming in. You want me to just read them all off? There's
yeah,
quite a few coming in. So,
yeah, they're adding up. You got any common themes there?
I had just a number all at once. So let's see. Holes in the sidewalk, blocking access.
Yeah.
Boat parked outside of our parking spot.
Yep.
And telephone poles should not be in the center of the sidewalk.
Yeah, it seems like you guys got this. Those are very good observations. These are real pictures, real situations. This happens every day. This is part of, we'll talk about this from an etiquette awareness piece in reference to accessibility in the built environment, but you see this happen all the time. Things to be aware of and know about that this does interfere with an individual's, somebody with a qualified individual with a disability and their access to the environment, to the public environment. I think that sailboat parked in that unloading zone is pretty important, and they also have some type of apparatus parked in the accessible parking spot. So just all these type of things happen on a daily basis, and it's good that you guys are picking up on this. So why accessibility matters? Why would we have a little bit of a discussion here today about it? Disabilities is the largest minority in the world. You can acquire a disability at any time in your life. You can be born with a disability. You can acquire one. A lot of people say that if you live long enough, you will have a disability. So it's something to keep in mind. It's also, as I just mentioned, it's the largest minority group in the world. It is, they consider that a lot of the reporting on disability is lower than it really is. And we'll talk about some of those statistics here in a minute. And it conflicts with other identities. So one thing I'd like to mention, it doesn't, having a disability, disability does not discriminate. If it doesn't matter the color of your skin, your socioeconomic status, your religion, anything like that, anybody can have a disability at any time. And also the fear of stereotypes and discrimination, undiagnosed or misdiagnosed disabilities all has an impact on accessibility in our community and in what we do. I'd like to mention here, if you're not aware, there is a definition for a disability. This definition is a legal term. It's not medical, but it does establish the foundation for disability and qualifies somebody with a disability. It is quite broad, but the basics here, as you can see, these 3 bullet points of the physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more of life's major activities, also having record of such an impairment, and also regarded as having an impairment. If we go back to this first bullet point, physical or mental impairment, you guys want to just throw some stuff in the chat there of what you think might be a physical or mental impairment that would limit major life activity? And if you could read some of those off, Kim?
Yep, I sure will. I'll let you know when we get some responses.
Okay, I'll elaborate here a little bit on this one part, that this first part, physical or mental impairment, that is kind of the core of the definition. This other piece is record of an impairment. Somebody may have a disability and it may be in remission. It may not be substantial at the time, but they are still covered under the ADA. An example of this might be somebody who has multiple sclerosis. It might be in remission. Somebody also might have cancer, and that may be in remission as well, but they still would qualify as having a disability. The regarded by others as having a disability is something that's kind of unique. But if you have a disfigurement, some burn scars, or some kind of unique part of yourself that really wouldn't qualify as a physical or mental impairment, but people treat you as you have a disability, you would be covered under this regarded as piece under the ADA. What do we got for some physical or mental impairments?
Sure. Yep. We've got missing limbs, a
Yes.
number of mental health diagnoses such as PTSD, depression,
Very good.
Traumatic brain injury, multiple sclerosis, autism, hearing impairment, deafness, blindness.
Great. Sounds like we're getting them all. That's good to hear. So yes, all of those that were mentioned, those are all would qualify as under the definition of a disability. So if we look at some statistics here, this is important to know how much of our population is comprised of people with disabilities. In the United States, you've got 57 million people that have a disability based on that definition. So we are looking at 22.5%. I'm not going to go into this. I'm sure all you can see off to the side here, all the millions that or how they're comprised of, with the difficulty seeing and in the blind, difficulty hearing, and people having difficulty walking and climbing stairs. So those are in the millions. It's quite substantial. There's another piece to this that I would mention, that I see, we have up here that 22.5% of the population is considered to have a disability. I've seen that number as low as 20%, but also consider that this is basically 1 in 5 people have a disability in the United States based on the definition. So if you're working with people, you have customers, if you've got a substantial amount or a few, you're probably going to have people with disabilities in your life, whether it's a retail situation or your family. So there's a good chance you're going to know somebody or come across somebody with a disability, and you may never know it based on the type of disability they have. Now, we did get some statistics here for South Dakota. If you look at that, your percentage there is a little higher than the national average. So that's something to consider. You also have, this is based on thousands, so you can look at those numbers as well. And we'll be sending you this PowerPoint, but you can have some numbers there to realize how substantial somebody with a disability may be there. You may be working with them, or they may be a customer. I will ask, I'm going to ask this question and see if it's too much, but does anybody have any questions about this?
Ed, I have not received any questions.
Okay, great. We'll keep moving forward. So here's some more numbers, some other things to consider. Again, you guys can look these over. You've got your employment. That's pretty low for people with disabilities. The poverty is substantial. Education also is impacted. And household income is also substantial with these type of numbers in the United States. And we were able to also include the numbers for South Dakota, and they seem to be pretty similar to what's going on in the United States. So something to be aware of. These are all, some of these areas are, you could do, a long presentation on a lot of these subjects in reference to people with disabilities. So there's a lot of information on this. This is pretty verifiable and pretty solid information. So as we move forward, some things some objectives we have for today is to discuss etiquette and best practices for working with people with disabilities, impact of stereotypes and bias, and discuss some language used regarding people with disabilities and interacting with people with disabilities. So some introduction here. Etiquette is barrier removal. That barrier removal could be a physical removal, as as I showed you in the beginning with that slide. It also is attitudinal. This statement here, people do not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. Something to keep in mind when you're interacting with somebody that has a disability, or I guess maybe even a customer in general. It's always good, and we'll mention this several times today, to ask questions and don't assume. Somebody with a disability is very capable, and if you take over, sometimes that can create more harm than good. Stereotypes and biases are a natural part of being a human being. We'll discuss those a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with having an opinion or something that you have about yourself that you may want to take a look at. It's just natural. It's just, we all have these things. In school, this is an interesting comment as well. In school, you get the lesson, then the test. Life is unique in the fact that you get the test and then the lesson. So one thing I also like to mention here, and we talk about this all the time, and a lot of you guys, if you are involved with the ADA, you hear this term. It depends. With the ADA, etiquette, awareness, it all depends on the situation, the individual, and how things are, and kind of on a case-by-case basis. So a lot of times you just can't give a black and white answer, and any question that's raised in the disability spectrum or the ADA spectrum, a lot of times it depends on a lot of information and gathering the appropriate information to be able to make a good decision about something. So I really enjoy this slide. It really kind of shows some unique pieces of equality, equity, and fairness. You have 3 individuals there. They all have access to a box, but because of their differences, they all see this baseball game from a different perspective. The equality here is they all have access to a box. They were all able to get to a box, but they still don't have a parity or fairness in reference to what they're all 3 being able to see. The equity here would be that as it's created, the individual who's short in stature does get an extra box, so that everybody's seeing the same thing from the same perspective. If the ball comes over, if the baseball comes over the fence, they all have pretty much the same opportunity to catch that ball, and they all get to see what's happening there. I think in kind of in the retail world or in the public domain, disabled parking, accessible parking is a good example of this as well. Everybody has access to parking when you go to a business, but the accessible parking, having that established, gives that equity. It allows people, somebody with a disability, to have closer access to the front entrance versus having to park all the way across the parking lot and try and access the business. So I always like this picture. It kind of gives you a good idea of the equity, fairness, and equality perspective. So some etiquette, disability etiquette from a business perspective, and whether you're a government entity or a business, it expands your scope of practice, knowing about etiquette, knowing about, people with disabilities and your customers and the people that come in to frequent your business. It expands that scope, oversees, it kind of gives you a broader look at everyone, and it enhances that. It provides better customer service. One thing we always say is, when things are accessible, they benefit everybody. And when you understand disability etiquette and you are aware of some differences, it will expand your knowledge base and how you relate to all people. Individuals with disabilities feel more comfortable and they're more productive. From the employment realm, when people are aware of their maybe some unique needs that they have. There are some statistics out there that when an employee is accommodated based on their disability, they are very productive and they do a very good job, and they have no, they have no issues in the work environment. Having some etiquette in this area makes all people feel welcome when they come into your business or come to take part in your service. And it expands in your understanding of the world. Again, disabilities is the largest minority in the world, so this expands across our globe. So there are different types of disabilities. Some of them are obvious, some of them are not so obvious. I think generally everybody thinks about somebody in a wheelchair when we talk about disabilities, but there are obviously, with those percentages we talked about earlier, there's all kinds of disabilities, and they reach across a broad spectrum. Some people use devices, some people don't. Some people have psychiatric needs and other types of disabilities. So be aware that somebody with a disability, it may be obvious, it may not be. There's all kinds of conditions that are out there that would qualify. Some are obvious, some are not so obvious. Some stereotypes, widely held, they're fixed with people with disabilities. Sometimes they're oversimplified. The next slide will show you some examples of these stereotypes. Stereotypes come from an efficient mental shortcut, just getting to the point of least resistance, and I guess you could say maybe sometimes making a snap judgment sometimes is a stereotype. This is the neural pathways make time-saving jumps to conclusions. It's a simple way to approach things, and sometimes it's not always the most effective. And it reflects judgments unaligned with your declared beliefs. As I mentioned earlier, we are all human, and this is part of being human. But being aware of it is also something that helps us evolve and helps with what we do with society. These are some general stereotypes that you see with disabilities. Some words. Some of these are not, these are not the definitions, or they're not words that really apply, but they can be used in the disability realm. That people with disabilities, they're inspirational. Most people just want to live their life just like anybody else without a disability. They're not deviant, sinister. They're not victims. Many people born with a disability have lived their lives just fine, and integrated themselves in society just fine. So they're not a victim. The exotic freaks, we've seen that in the circuses from a long time ago. We don't do that anymore, but that was part of the exotic freaks. And some of these other words, I'll let you look those over. The one piece here, for one reason or another, some people think people with disabilities are non-sexual. They enjoy everything that we all enjoy. So keep that in mind. And they're capable of, and people with disabilities are not capable. Well, they are capable of full participation in everyday life. So again, they just want to be inclusive, included, and enjoy the same things that everybody else does. Some common mistakes with an individual with a disability: avoiding eye contact. I think this applies to anybody you deal with, you work with, you engage with. You want to acknowledge them, and that eye contact is important for everybody, and it includes people with disabilities. It's also not good to these comments here. I saw a TV show about disabilities, or my uncle was blind, so and now he can see. Having all these stories, these can be considered, to lessen an individual's life experience. Saying, well, I kind of know what I kind of know what you're going through because my uncle was blind for a week and now he can see. It's like, no, everybody is different. Their experiences are different. So these type of comments really are not constructive. Individuals with disabilities, they want to participate in everyday life, and let the person decide. Everybody's an individual. Everybody makes decisions on their own, and engage with them from that perspective. Is there, at this point, I've been talking a lot. Is there any questions or anything pertinent anybody needs to have answered or would like to ask at this point?
Ed, I don't have any questions in the chat box.
Okay. So feel free to put anything in there if you want. I'll keep moving forward. All right, so we have a video here. Let me make, hopefully this will come up. This is a really good video with disabilities.
Say, Ed, we're not able to hear the video. You might want to just make sure your video is all the way up, or your volume, excuse me.
Is that on the bar here?
It should just be on your settings, like your actual volume for the computer.
Oh, my volume. Okay, let me put this way up here. How's that?
There's still no sound. Try the volume on the other side, the volume. Okay, it looks like it's.
Did that help?
No, I'm still not able to hear it, so.
Did you check the box when you went to share your screen that says share sound? It's kind of down on the left side bottom.
Okay, can you say that again? Share.
Sorry, this is Pat. There should be a box when you go to share your screen, and it's down kind of in the left side bottom, and it says to share sound. And that might be the problem. Having done that many times, missed that, checking that box. That's
Yeah, the bar I think you're talking about, is that the one that has mute, share video, security, participation? Because
yeah, I think so.
that one is sitting at the top of my screen.
No, it's right when you go to share your screen, you get a pop-up box that you select which thing you're showing or going to share, and then there's just like a little place where you check a little box that says share the sound.
There's 3 dots.
Yeah,
Click
that's
on
okay.
Click
So
on the 3 dots in that black bar.
All right, and then I got that, and I got a bunch of options here. So share sound. So let me see. So I just clicked share sound. So let's see if
correct, Ed.
let's see if that worked. Should we try it now?
Yes, please.
All right. Sorry, guys. How's that?
We have volume. Thanks for your
Morning, Bob. Morning there, big man. Morning, Alice. There's no need to be awkward.
Poor Bob. Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Attention!
Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
Or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping?
I got you.
Wait, ah! Oh no, might actually not.
If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, would you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
What?
Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
So don't address me just because I have a great smile.
Just because I'm blind
May I help you?
does not mean I'm deaf.
Just because I'm deaf doesn't mean I'm blind.
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath, relax. We don't bite.
Unless we're really hungry.
Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello. And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi, would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alice.
Right.
Awkward no more. Nice job, Bob. Go forth and be human.
There's no need to be awkward.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I think that little video is a lot of fun. So it just kind of has a nice approach to disability and disability etiquette and just relaxing. So with the etiquette, some fundamentals, you've seen some of this in this video, focus on individuality, have some patience. Sometimes somebody with a mental disability or a mental challenge may need just a little bit more time. You have to listen a little bit more attentively. We've seen this come up a lot. Ask, don't assume. Treat people with respect and dignity. These first 4 bullets, I'd like to emphasize this is how we all, whether you have a disability or not, you want to be treated. And so just, that it's just kind of part of good parts of our society and how we do things in society. There's also this upgrade. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the golden rule. I think it's basically do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They've upgraded this a little bit, so we do like to bring this up. It's called the platinum rule, and it is do unto others as they would want done to them. So it is just an upgrade to that. It kind of focuses a little bit on disability and some etiquette. So it's something to consider. I like both of these. I like the golden rule and I like the platinum rule. So, but we do like to bring this up a little bit. So something to consider. So with some specifics on disability, The mobility and physical disabilities. Again, we've seen this. Speak directly to the person. If it's possible, it's really good to kneel or sit in a chair and be face to face with the individual. That's always effective. That's always good, a good protocol. If you cannot do that, try and maybe take a step back or a step or two back, so that the individual in the chair or the individual that's lower doesn't have to, bend their neck to look up at you, versus if you're just a few steps back, you have a better eye angle. So that's something to consider. Again, here we are, ask if they would like assistance. It's very important, and we saw this in the video, not to touch an individual's mobility devices, their canes, their crutches. I personally have seen people, a security guard once grabbed an individual who was blind. He grabbed their cane and tried to lead them around by the cane. It was a big no-no. So keep that in mind. These are their personal items. It's actually considered their personal space and even part of who they are, the devices that they may have with them. From physical accessibility, keep your ramps and your path clear. You know about your ADA requirements for accessibility. Also note where the nearest accessible features are in your building or your business. A lot of businesses, buildings have different locations for their accessible bathrooms. So know where those are at. And also, if people call and say, do you have parking and is it accessible? Your accessible parking might be located in a different place other than your main parking. So know where those features are, so you can help people make sure that they have a straight shot or a straight opportunity to get to your business. Some words here, somebody in a wheelchair, they're not wheelchair bound or confined to a wheelchair. And we'll talk a little bit about words here, but the term handicap is also on its way. It's been on its way out for a long time. It's really not used anymore. One thing I like to talk about here is this picture with this athlete in the wheelchair. This is a rugby wheelchair, and it's called rugby. It's rugby wheelchair, and it's very intense. There was a movie came out years ago. I think it was called Murder Ball. And it was a whole movie type of documentary on this sport, and it's incredible to watch. You can see this chair is all beefed up. And what I also like to point out is, if you notice, this athlete is sponsored by Land Rover. She's got all of her little emblems there, and she's a regular athlete. She's got sponsorships. So it's a real good example of just kind of what you see with these professional athletes as well, like Michaela Schifrin. I think she's sponsored by, she's a professional skier. She's sponsored by Land Rover as well. So that's kind of cool. This was a video, but I don't think, I was trying to work this morning and it doesn't work. So I'm going to have to apologize on this video, but this basically just talked about, individuals in wheelchairs and how they work and how they function, and some things to consider. We're going to talk about the things that were in this video. So we talked about mobility disabilities. We'll also touch base here, blind, low vision, visual disabilities, some assumptions. People think that somebody who is blind or has a visual disability uses Braille. And that's actually not correct. There's a small percentage of people who are blind who use Braille. Braille is very difficult to learn. And with all the technology that's out there and all the technology that's advancing day to day, Braille is becoming less and less important. It is still requested. People still use it. Be aware of that, but it's not used as much as you would think. If you're working with somebody with a disability or somebody who is blind, know to get their attention, speak directly to them. Identify yourself when you enter a room or a group or you approach them. Just identify yourself. They'll know you're speaking to them. If information needs to be read, that's an acceptable form of access. If you do get into some detailed information, you would, as a business, you may have to provide an interpreter. If you're a car dealership and somebody's coming in and they want to buy, and people who are blind do buy cars. They have somebody else that may be, driving the car for them, but if they may come in to buy a car, and so having an interpreter there for that detailed amount of information is important. I think a better example might be a doctor's office. Somebody who comes in who may be blind, they need to have an interpreter there because that information is incredibly important and incredibly detailed. If you do give directions to somebody who's blind, try and be as specific as you can, using terms like just go over there, and pointing does not help them. You might want to give them some specifics to get to a location that they need to get to. Keep paths clear from obstructions. People with disabilities can't see things when they're sticking out into the hallways and into the sidewalks. Here we are again, ask if they need assistance. And the term visually impaired is on kind of on its way out. So something to consider. Deaf and hard of hearing, auditory disabilities. It's interesting to note that there is a deaf culture. They have a common language, which is American Sign Language here in this country. They have shared values, beliefs, all of that. So they have their own culture, and it's very unique. They function together in a lot of ways. Sign language, one thing to realize about American Sign Language, as I mentioned, that's not universal. American Sign Language is used in this country. Every country has its own sign language. So there's Spanish Sign Language, there's German Sign Language. They're all different, so that it's not a universal around the world language. When you are working with somebody or engaging with somebody who is deaf, it's good to speak directly to them. And as you saw in that video, don't speak to the interpreter. Ask how, and you can also ask how they would prefer to communicate. And if they need written communication can be good, or you may have to engage with a sign language interpreter. One thing to realize about somebody who is deaf is that English is not their primary language. So if you do communicate with them by writing, their sentence structure and how they communicate through written material may take a moment to decipher and understand, because their primary language is American Sign Language, and that's what they use. So if you do communicate in the written form, know that it may be a little bit different, and you may have to take a moment to decipher it. Avoid saying, when you're interacting with somebody who is deaf, avoid saying, tell them. Don't look at the interpreter and say, tell them I said this. Speak directly to the individual and make your statement to the individual. We saw this in the video, shouting and dismissing people with disabilities is never a good idea. Always engage, always see how you can help. Ignoring them only could escalate a situation. And the term hearing impaired is beginning to seems like it's on its way out. That was a popular term for a while, but again, that's starting to change. So communication with disabilities, people give them full attention. Don't interrupt their sentences. Don't interrupt the interpreter. Wait until the communication is complete before you engage again. It's a solid back and forth. If you don't understand, sometimes you can ask an individual to repeat themselves. If somebody has difficulty speaking, they know that. And if you're just calm with them and don't get flustered and just stay engaged, they'll figure out a way to get you the information that they want. So realize that you're not the first person they've engaged with if they have difficulty communicating. It's also very good to repeat what you heard. That always helps. And again, this helps with everybody. Sometimes it's good to move to a different environment if you're having trouble communicating. Maybe they need to be in a room or off to the side to where there's not so much going on around them, behind them. They may be getting flustered by an active situation around them. So realize that could be an option. It's also good, if you can't understand somebody, you might want to consider some alternatives. Again, this would fall under that ask this individual what they might need. You could tell them, I'm having really hard time understanding you. What else could we try here? I've also experienced in my career, sometimes a different person can literally make a difference in the communication. We all communicate differently, and you may want to just see, let me have you talk to to Sally, we're having trouble, but Sally may have a different perspective or be able to understand what you're trying to convey here better than I can. So consider that as an option. So we have cognitive disabilities. These are kind of the psychiatric disabilities. These are some of the ones that we talked about earlier, which can be invisible. They're not easily noticed. You may never know somebody has this type of disability. So, but they are prevalent. We all, there's a lot of people that have these. As we mentioned before, we've mentioned some of this before. The calm and the patience and being calm is always a good approach. And speaking directly to the person, not their companion. Use visuals when possible. Sometimes people might understand a picture or some scenarios a little bit more clearly. Try and be as concise as you can. You can try and rephrase or have other people try and engage to help with the communication. Down here at the very bottom, we've got some words here we're going to be talking about, but the crazy, insane, lunatic, hysterical, those are not terms to be used. They are not acceptable in the disabled community. So there is a component here, people of short stature. These are conditions that are growth related. There's something to be aware of. They are out there. They do fall. Some of these do fall under the category of a disability based on that definition we talked about earlier. If you can, like somebody with a wheelchair, get on their level, stay engaged with them. And it's also, if you have lower telephones or banks, a lot of times when you have lowered things that you think might be lowered might be things that are ADA compliant. So keep that in mind. If you have ADA compliance with a lot of your facilities and your equipment, a lot of times when that's accessible, somebody of short stature can use those as well. The term dwarf, little person, short stature versus midget, we understand that the term midget is not an acceptable term, and these first three terms are good to use. So everybody's favorite topic, we talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, service animals. Maggie did an incredible job at presenting this. Know that, again, they're out there. There's a lot of criteria for these animals. It can be very complicated at times. Obviously, don't speak to the animal, don't engage with the animal. If you want, you could ask for permission, but most of the time you're probably not going to get it, because these are working animals. They're not to be engaged with that much. They need to pay attention to their owner. It's good not to distract them with offering the foods or petting them or anything like that. Also keep an eye on if you have children. Children love to go pet the service animal. That can be detrimental to the individual that uses that animal. These animals have really good lives. They usually go home at the end of the day and they get off leash and get their vest off and go play. So they have a pretty good life. And sometimes they may be napping or sitting. Don't assume they're not working. If they are a seizure animal or a diabetic alert animal, they're still working. They will pick up on their handler's needs. And there are, I will just say this, I don't want to get too much into this because this is a whole topic, but you can ask two questions. You can ask an individual. If the individual's not, if the dog is, or if the animal's not obvious, you can ask, is that animal required because of a disability? They may say yes or no. And then if they say yes, you can ask what service or task has that animal been trained to perform. You can ask those two questions. Most of the time, if they answer those two questions and the animal behaves well, it's under control, you can allow them to go in and participate. So there is this piece here called the spoon theory. This is kind of unique. We like to bring this up. This involves some people with disabilities that have some types of conditions that can be quite exhaustive throughout the day. They only have this basically applies to having a certain amount of energy. And you can look at how you're giving a certain number of spoons every day and how you use them. You have to kind of lay your day out in reference to how many spoons you're going to use, because every time you do an activity, you eat, you bathe, you style your hair, you're going to have to give up one of your spoons. And you have to kind of plan your day out so that you've got maybe one or two left at the end of the day, so you can have some engagement with your family, your kids, and things. So sometimes people have disabilities where they really have to monitor how they work, how they interact, how much stress that they can be exposed to, things like that. I think MS might be a good example of this in reference to, you know, the stress somebody might experience or have good days, bad days with their disability. So they have to monitor that constantly. So this is something to be aware of. This is a unique approach to certain types of disabilities. Implicit bias. This is an automatic unconscious thought process. I am guilty of this in a lot of ways in my life. These are mental habits, gut instincts, intuition, snap judgments. Sometimes they're not, or most of the time they're not based on a logical reasoning or analysis. So it's just kind of, sometimes this is just us being us. And to be, you know, part of having a training like this is to be aware of some of the unique characteristics and differences that we all have, including interacting with somebody with a disability and how you view that person. Hopefully what we've talked about has given you a little bit of foresight in reference to, you know, how you might interact with somebody with a disability or how you feel about somebody with a disability, and know that, you know, that you maybe we challenge that a little bit. Some hurdles, things to consider: the fear of failure and harassment, in responses with humility and willingness to grow. If you do make a mistake, know that you can, you know, you can apologize and you can move on and you can learn. So it's again, we are all human. We all make mistakes. We all have our places we need to grow and improve on. Don't ignore the differences. You know, you engage with those. You know, we're all different, and so are people with disabilities. That sugarcoating and ignoring is not something that can create a good situation. So be aware of that as well. Some language. Their choice of words and how you use your words, abilities, you know, if you're approaching things and focusing on people's abilities and what they can do versus their limitations, how are you looking at somebody that you're interacting with with disabilities? Is your first thought, you know, what they can't do? Or are you considering, well, yeah, this person looks like they're perfectly capable of coming in here and participating with everything. Just, you know, let's take it from that perspective. Also, that are you looking at empowering? Are you looking at making sure that they're getting what they need versus belittling and thinking that they are less than? And the intent versus the impact. These are all things to consider in your language when you and even your thought processes. With disabilities, we like to. This is we're going to kind of discuss this a little bit. It has always been person first, you know, person with the disability, person with autism, individual in the wheelchair. It's always been the individual first, and that has been acceptable language. That is starting to change a little bit. It's something to be aware of. Sometimes you don't even have to bring the disability piece into it. You know, you don't even have to mention that the individual has autism or the individual has crutches or the individual's in a wheelchair. But, you know, person first language has always been popular way to approach working with people with disabilities. But that is changing a little bit. Some terminology this is just not acceptable. You know, I would say if you can review these words, know that they're not something to use anymore. The crippled, the handicapped, mongoloid, retarded, mental retardation, all of these words are just, they're not on their way out. They were really never acceptable. So they are terms and language words that are used basically to belittle, and they're used just in general in our society. So to bring people down. So that's something to take a look at there. The euphemisms, neutral, vague, mild, indirect. So be aware of the euphemisms. There is that treadmill, that how things evolve with the euphemisms. You've gone from fat, overweight, heavy, chubby, curvy, plus size to thick. Then, you know, you've got your crazy, the lunatic, the maniac, psycho, insane, and then the mental issue, which is the better term. Differently abled, varied ability, and neurodivergent. And I will be honest with you, I got to look that word up. I still don't necessarily understand what neurodivergent is, but you can see the evolution here of words in our society as we have evolved, and how they continues to get better. You know, again, the term handicap kind of evolved into disability, and now I think a lot of times it's when you use the term accessible. So we talked about this earlier. We had a picture from the beginning of our presentation, being aware of accessible features. This is very important in awareness, making sure that people have access to some of these basic items, basic things that a lot of people without disabilities take for granted. You know, ramps, getting in. Do you have stairs to your building? If you have stairs, what have you done to accommodate somebody who might not be able to get over those stairs? If you can't afford a ramp, or ramps aren't an option, what options have you created so people have access to your services? Your bathrooms need to be accessible, materials, technology, all of that has accessibility requirements. So these subjects all have their own 2 or 3 hour presentation, but there's something to be aware of and know of, that, you know, awareness of disability and etiquette also includes the physical environment. Some things to consider with the materials. If you're asked to provide some materials, you know, somebody may ask for this. You don't necessarily have to have this in place on your desk ready to go, but these are some things that some people might request. If you're putting out information, they might request something like a larger size letters. Size 18 or larger is best. White on black is a good request. That's easy to accomplish, easy to accommodate an individual. The matte versus the glossy, things like that are always, be prepared for that. It could come up, and these are reasonable things that you could do for somebody that needs this type of an accommodation. Also, accessible features, your tours, you know, from a customer service perspective, you know, your tours, you need to consider your accessibility with your tours. If you're having boats and whatever you're doing, can people get on those? Can they get to those? As we talked earlier, you know, service counter heights, those all have accessibility requirements, and sometimes having those service counter heights, you know, are at a good height for a lot of people, even people with short stature. Having a clipboard handy if you're requiring people to write. Reach limits have requirements for it. If you have questions about that, we can help you with that at the ADA Center. And again, this physical accessibility, keeping paths clear, keeping the travel open so people can get in and out, get to goods and services. So as we've talked about, kind of trying to, you know, throughout this presentation, you know, you seek to understand before expecting to be understood. It's maybe this is another a good way to approach this. So something to consider. And then I'll let you guys read these for a second, look these over. These are just some little snippets of wisdom, I guess you could say, but take a moment and look these over. All right, so we've got about 2 minutes left here. Let's see, I'd like to maybe get some input. Let me find one of these might be good. We have a lot of these scenarios that, let's see. Is it considered inappropriate to say, see you later when talking to somebody who is blind? Or to say, go for a walk to somebody with a wheelchair? Are these okay? Maybe you can do a yes or no. And Kim, you can help us see what's coming in.
We have one response so far, Ed. Yes, they are okay. We're actually getting a number of responses, but yes, they are okay.
Yes. Good. That's appropriate. These are kind of just you know, terms we use in our society as we communicate in this country and how we relate to each other. So these are perfectly fine to use. I did have a very good friend of mine who's in a wheelchair, and you know, he would always say, "You want to go for a roll?" That's what he would say to me. So yeah, let's go out and have a beer. So you know, these are perfectly fine. And I think let's look at this one. The adaptive equipment that a person with a disability uses should be considered part of that person and should be given personal space. Yes or no?
We're getting some responses in, Ed. Yes.
Good. That's correct. This is as we discussed, you know, the wheelchair, the canes, crutches, all of that is part of an individual space. So. And I think that that's going to wrap us up. Do you, I'll let you take it from here, Kim, or do we have any questions coming in that maybe we could field here really quickly?
Yeah, Ed, we don't have any questions, maybe I'll check here in a couple of seconds, but just quickly before we wrap up, appreciate you, Ed and Maggie, for joining us today and doing a presentation on disability etiquette, and for those that have actually joined in and participated in today's training too. Appreciate your time as well. I will be sending out a follow-up email with some information following today's training, so look for those. With that, don't have any questions, Ed.
Okay, I really appreciate. Thank you guys for inviting us in, and hopefully we've helped and know we are available for any type of help you need with your ADA needs.
Getting comments in, Ed, thank you for excellent information. So.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.